He thought destroying me would make her the star. He wanted to see me crawl, to erase me from the company I built with him. But he never imagined that his betrayal would become the very weapon of his downfall. Because sometimes, the woman you betray isn't the one you ruin, she's the one who learns to rise higher than you ever dreamed. The night it all began was glittering and cruel, wrapped in golden lights and false laughter. The annual Lux Vision Gala, our company's proudest event, was meant to celebrate innovation, creativity, and power. To everyone else, it was a dream. To me, it was a carefully staged nightmare. I arrived late on purpose. I wanted him to feel my absence before he saw me. I wanted to see if his eyes searched for me in the crowd, if a part of him still remembered that once, none of this would have existed without me. When I stepped into the ballroom, all eyes turned. The click of my heels echoed against the marble floor, cutting through the hum of conversation. I wore a sleek black gown, minimal jewelry, and a calm expression that hid the storm inside. Daniel stood near the stage, surrounded by investors, flashing his perfect smile, the one that could charm a room and hide 1,000 lies. His arm was around Celeste Monroe, the company's new, creative face. She was young, radiant, everything a man like him thought he wanted. The crowd adored her. They saw a rising star. I saw the shadow of my replacement. As I watched them, I felt a bitter taste rise in my throat. I had once stood there beside him, introducing our ideas, our dreams, our shared vision. Now, I was watching the man I'd built an empire with parade another woman as his partner, both in business and, I suspected, in everything else. When Daniel finally noticed me, his smile faltered just for a second. That single flicker of guilt almost made me pity him. Almost. He excused himself from the group and approached me with that same controlled grace that used to melt me years ago. "Amara," he said smoothly, as if my name were a formality, "you look radiant tonight." "Radiant enough to be replaced," I replied softly, but my voice cut sharper than glass. His smile stiffened. "Let's not do this here," he muttered, glancing around. I leaned closer, lowering my tone. "Don't worry, Daniel, I won't ruin your big night. You're doing a good enough job of that yourself." Celeste appeared beside him, her perfume sickly sweet. "Amara," she said with a perfectly rehearsed smile. "I'm so glad you could make it. Daniel told me how much this event used to mean to you." "Used to." The word hung between us like a sneer. I offered a polite nod and turned away before I did something I'd regret. I made my way to the bar, the buzz of conversation and laughter blurring into a distant hum. My fingers tightened around my glass as I watched the man I loved pretend I was nothing more than a business acquaintance. Daniel took the stage later that night, microphone in hand, confidence radiating from him like heat. I knew what was coming. I had seen the draft of his speech on his desk weeks ago, before he realized I still had access to his files. "Tonight," he began, his voice strong and clear, "we celebrate not only our achievements but the beginning of a new era at Lux Vision." A chill spread through me. Around the room, cameras flashed, and people leaned forward, eager for the announcement. I wanted to scream, to stop him, but I couldn't move. Every word felt like a blade slicing deeper. "For years, we've built this company on passion and creativity," he continued. "And now, we're evolving, embracing a new vision, one that reflects our growth and our future. I'm proud to introduce the brilliant mind who will lead this new chapter, Celeste Monroe, our new creative director." Applause erupted. The sound was deafening. I felt it vibrate in my chest, like the sound of a world collapsing. "My world." Daniel smiled down at her, and Celeste turned to the crowd, glowing under the lights. I could see it now, the ambition in her eyes, the hunger. She had been waiting for this moment. I stood still, watching through a haze of disbelief. The company I had poured my heart into, the name we had built together, was slipping from my hands in front of everyone. I wasn't just being replaced, I was being erased. A soft voice broke my daze. "Mrs. Blake," said one of the investors, a gray-haired man I'd known for years. "I'm surprised you didn't make the announcement yourself. Didn't you and Daniel start this project together?" I forced a smile. "We did," I said quietly. "But apparently, every project reaches a point where the foundation becomes invisible." He gave me a sympathetic look before being pulled away by the crowd. I turned back toward Daniel. He was shaking hands, laughing, pretending everything was perfect. For a brief second, his eyes met mine across the room. And in that glance, I saw it, the smallest flicker of unease. He knew what he'd done. He knew I wasn't someone who would stay silent forever. As the night went on, I wandered through the ballroom like a ghost, memories flashing with every corner. The first design sketches we made on napkins. The nights we stayed up till dawn building pitch decks. The promises we made, not just to each other, but to ourselves. To be equals. To dream together. Now, he was standing in the dream alone. When the speeches ended and the crowd began to thin, I stepped out onto the terrace. The night air was cool against my skin. The city stretched before me, lights flickering like distant hope. My chest ached, not just from heartbreak but from something deeper, a realization. He thought he had broken me. But in truth, he had freed me. I looked down at the diamond ring on my finger, its sparkle mocking me. Slowly, I slipped it off and set it on the railing. You can have your new vision, Daniel, I whispered to the wind. But don't forget, I was the one who taught you how to see. Inside, laughter and music swelled again, but I no longer cared. I took a deep breath and turned away, walking toward the elevator with steady steps. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew one thing, this was not the end of my story. That night, as I left the glittering world that once belonged to me, I felt a strange calm. Beneath the ache, something new was stirring. Determination, fire, a quiet promise to myself that I would rise again. Because he hadn't just betrayed his wife. He had underestimated his equal. And that would be his greatest mistake. As the elevator doors closed behind me, I caught one last glimpse of Daniel through the glass, smiling, confident, unaware. He thought he had won. He didn't realize he'd just created the woman who would take everything back. The night ended, but something far greater had begun. He thought my silence meant defeat. That walking away was surrender. But he didn't know silence can be sharper than revenge. And sometimes, the best way to destroy someone who tried to break you is to let them watch you rise higher than their reach. 6 months had passed since the night Daniel publicly erased me from Lux Vision. 6 months since I walked away from the company I built with my bare hands and from the man who used to whisper that he couldn't breathe without me. I had traded champagne galas for instant coffee in a tiny apartment overlooking the gray skyline of a new city. There were no luxury cars, no designer gowns, just quiet mornings, unpaid bills, and the heavy ache of starting over. But pain has a strange way of sharpening you. It burns off the illusions until only truth remains. Every day, I reminded myself of one thing, I still had my mind. My ideas, the creativity that had built Lux Vision wasn't Daniel's, it was mine. And they could steal my name from the company's website, erase my title from the board, but they could never erase the spark that started it all. I began consulting for small fashion startups. It wasn't glamorous work. Some days I designed handbags in coffee shops, other days I pitched marketing strategies from my couch with a flickering Wi-Fi signal. But slowly, something began to form. Clients returned. They brought others. People liked that I wasn't chasing trends, I was building meaning. That was how Rivera Atelier was born. The name came to me one night when I couldn't sleep, Rivera, meaning truth. It felt like a promise to myself. A vow that whatever I created next would be real. At first, it was just me and Eli, a quiet young designer I'd met through an online forum. He had once worked at Lux Vision but left after refusing to lie about a collection Celeste had stolen from a competitor. He'd lost his job, his savings, and his confidence. When I asked him to join me, he hesitated. Nobody goes against Daniel Blake and wins, he said. I smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time someone does. We started in a cramped studio that smelled of fabric dye and stale coffee. The walls were bare, the floor cracked, but it was ours. Every sketch, every stitch, every sleepless night was proof that I still existed beyond Daniel's shadow. I learned how to lead with grace instead of ego, to listen instead of demand. For the first time, I wasn't chasing validation, I was chasing purpose. And then came Sophia Tran. She was an investor known for spotting potential before anyone else could. She'd heard about Rivera through one of my clients and asked to meet. I expected her to reject me the moment she learned I was Daniel's ex-wife. But instead, she smiled and said, "Good. That means you've already survived the worst." She invested without hesitation. Her support gave us the boost we needed to scale production, hire staff, and build a real team. Soon, Rivera was gaining traction, quietly, steadily, beautifully. While we grew, Luck's vision began to crumble. The rumors reached me first through whispers in the industry. Late shipments, lawsuits, investors backing out. Then came the headlines: Celeste Monroe accused of plagiarism, employees resigning, product lines recalled. The empire Daniel had stolen was starting to rot from within. It should have felt satisfying. Maybe part of me even wanted it too. But mostly, I felt something else: sadness. Because once upon a time, Daniel and I dreamed of creating something that would last forever. And now he was watching it fall apart, one headline at a time. The true turning point came when I was invited to speak at the Global Fashion Summit. It was the same event where Daniel had humiliated me half a year earlier. Only this time, I wasn't the forgotten wife in the corner. I was Amara Blake, founder and creative director of Rivera Atelier, an emerging force in ethical fashion. I almost didn't go. The memory of that night still haunted me. But Eli's words convinced me: if you don't show them who you've become, they'll only remember who he made you look like. When I arrived at the Grand Hall, flashes of cameras filled the air. Journalists rushed to capture the rising names of the industry, and to my surprise, I was one of them. My heart raced, but I kept walking, heels steady, posture strong. I had no reason to hide anymore. Then I saw him. Daniel was standing by the entrance, looking smaller somehow. The sparkle of arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by exhaustion. His suit hung loose, his expression hollow. There was no Celeste by his side, only the echo of everything he'd lost. Our eyes met. For a moment, the noise of the room disappeared. There were no cameras, no whispers, just the silence between two people who once shared a dream and destroyed it. I turned away first and stepped onto the stage when my name was announced. As I stood under the spotlight, memories rushed back: the humiliation, the pain, the long nights of rebuilding. I took a deep breath and began. Success, I said, my voice clear and calm, isn't about how loudly you can announce your victories. It's about how quietly you rebuild after losing everything. The crowd went silent. Every word came from my scars, from the lessons pain had carved into me. Sometimes, I continued, the world confuses silence for weakness. They think walking away means defeat. But true strength isn't about fighting to stay where you're unwanted, it's about choosing to start again, even when no one believes you can. Applause filled the hall, thundering through the air. I looked down at Daniel one last time. He was clapping too, his eyes glistening. When our gazes met again, there was no hatred left, only understanding. After the event, he approached me quietly, away from the cameras. Amara, he said softly, I was wrong. I studied him for a moment. The man who once stood taller than life now looked human, fragile, repentant. No, I replied. You were just blind. You thought destroying me would make her shine. But you forgot, diamonds don't break in fire. They're formed by it. He lowered his eyes. I lost everything. I gave a small, genuine smile. No, Daniel, you lost me. Everything else was just the consequence. I walked away, leaving him there in the fading echo of applause. For the first time in years, I felt light. Not because I'd won, but because I no longer needed to prove anything. Outside, the night air felt soft against my skin. The city lights shimmered, and in their reflection, I saw a woman who had survived betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation, and still found her way back to herself. Daniel thought my silence was surrender. But silence was where I rebuilt my strength, where I became someone no betrayal could destroy. That night, as I looked out at the skyline glowing with 1,000 possibilities, I whispered the words I had waited so long to believe. I'm free. And for the first time, it felt true.